All right. So I am Sonia Ahuja. I'm the founder and CEO of Orbis 86. And at Orbis 86, it actually is our mission to onboard people to Web3 through arts, entertainment, and most importantly, education. I'm very happy to be here with fabulous women in Web3 and share a little bit of the knowledge that I have on NFTs. And this is first of a 5-part series. And it could probably be even 6 parts, depending on whether we also can have another workshop with Cardano NFTs or not. But essentially, what we're trying to do is over the next 5 weeks, we will go through an hour-long session each. And in each session, we'll be covering a few different topics, all related to NFTs. The goal is, upon the completion of the 5 to 6 week course, where every week we meet for an hour, attendees of the session, anyone listening into the session, they should be able to create some artwork using generative AI tools or using some programming, create a bunch of NFTs for themselves. And most importantly, it's not just about creating the digital art, but also being able to publish this digital art as NFTs and hopefully transferring that NFTs to their friends or selling some of those NFTs. So that is the main goal, to learn how to use the generative AI tools and also to learn how to use the blockchain to mint and distribute NFTs. So with that, let's jump right into the history and evolution of NFTs. So today, this is the topic that we are going to be talking about, all right? So moving on from here, first of all, let's try and figure out what are NFTs. We had gone through this. We spoke about this even in one of our previous sessions, like the first session. So that if you had attended that session, there might be a little bit of redundancy here because, again, we are covering the history and evolution of NFTs here, but please bear with us. So what are NFTs? There are a few different ways in which NFTs are defined, but we all know that NFT, the term in itself, is an acronym for non-fungible tokens. So what are non-fungible tokens? Non-fungible tokens are digital assets. And the most important thing is that each non-fungible token is a unique asset in itself. By definition and in a literary sense, an NFT is always something that is unique. It is just one copy that exists at any point in the world. However, there are some flavors and variations, so we'll talk about that. But by definition, that is how NFTs started. And it's the scarcity, the rarity that gives it that value. So NFTs are digital assets, right? Now, when we know about, what do we know about assets? Assets have a value. Typically, assets would appreciate in value. So NFTs are digital assets, right? And by digital assets, what can be a digital asset? Anything that is digitally captured could be a digital asset. So it's not just collectibles that are digital collectibles, right? So when you think about digital collectibles aren't just limited to digital artwork, but digital collectibles could be things like music files or trading cards, right? Or anything that can be digitally collected and there is a value, a price that you're paying for it. So that's what NFTs are, right? They are digital assets that are unique and they are minted on the blockchain. So in layman's terms, NFTs are like the cool kids of the world, one of a kind. They are digital assets, cannot be replicated. And that's also a cool way for people to boast about owning something that's unique, one of a kind, and owned just by them. And they have the digital provenance to prove it. So now let's talk about what is the difference between NFTs and fungible tokens, right? So as we know, NFTs stand for non-fungible tokens. And then fungible tokens are basically assets like cryptocurrencies. Now we all know about cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, XRP, Terra. You have so many cryptocurrencies, right? So let's talk about what are the main differences. So here there's a table in front of us, right? There are 5 points that we look at: uniqueness, use case, interchangeability, the supply, and also how are they structured on blockchain. Okay? So when we think about NFTs are like, cryptocurrencies. You can think of cryptocurrencies like a dollar bill, right? So let's say Shanice has $1 and I have $1 and Anushka has $1. Now, if each of us exchanges our dollar, at the end of the day, all of us would be left with $1 each, right? So we all have $1, and if we exchange it, no matter how many times we exchange it, we will all be left with $1 each. Why? Because that $1 bill is essentially the same. Yes, it might have a different serial number. However, the point being here is that when you exchange those dollar bills, right, you're transferring value of $1, and every single time you're left with $1. So this is known as a fungible token, where a $1 bill is exactly the same and has the same value. But now I hope that, we have some Pokemon fans in the house, or even if you're not a fan, you probably have kids who are watching Pokemon, so you know about Pokemon, or you just know about Pokemon with or without kids, right? So if you think about the Pokemon series, so Pokemon, they started as a collectible card game, right? So now think about the scenario where you have a holographic Pokemon card, right? And let's just imagine that there is only one pack of Pokemon trading card in the world. So let's say you have a holographic Charizard card, right? And then I have a Pikachu. So Anushka has a Charizard, I have a Pikachu, and then Daniela has a Bulbasaur. So now when the time comes and we're trying to exchange the cards, right? If we exchange our cards, then at the end of the day, we are not left with the same card, right? So if I exchange my Bulbasaur for a rare Charizard, that's actually a bad trade. Why? Because Bulbasaur, even in the series, right, more common than Charizard, which is already evolved and is a rare card in the Pokemon pack. So each card has its own rarity. And even though at the end of the day, each one of these 3 cards is a Pokemon card, because they all represent something different, they all have a different rarity, and each one of them is unique. So if Anushka and I exchange cards, it will be a bad deal for Anushka to exchange her rare Charizard for a simple Pokemon that I have. But if we go ahead with that exchange, after we exchange cards, Anushka will be left with a Pokemon, I'll have a Charizard. So it's not the same as a dollar-to-dollar exchange, right? Now, moving forward, cryptocurrencies and NFTs, where do we find the use cases, right? So cryptocurrencies in general, as we know, they are considered a digital store of value and also exchange, right? The word cryptocurrency has currency in it. Unfortunately, a lot of the times cryptocurrencies right now being dealt like stocks because of the volatility. But at the end of the day, the main goal for cryptocurrencies was, hey, cryptocurrencies could be used as a digital store of value to exchange value across the globe without any intermediaries, right? So cryptocurrencies are a store of value, and the transactions, they provide value to transactions. On the other hand, NFTs also store value, but in a different way, right? So NFTs can be valuable because they represent a digital asset that has been collected by someone. On the other hand, NFTs can also be used to prove digital provenance, right? Digital ownership. So if you buy an original Versace backpack, a one of its kind, it could actually come with an NFT that proves that you are the actual owner of this Versace backpack, right? So those are some of the use cases of NFTs. Again, digital assets and digital ownership. NFTs can be used very well with the existing infrastructure to support digital assets as well as digital ownership records. Finally, when it comes to interchangeability, as I said earlier, instead of a dollar bill, let's just talk about having ADA, right? Having each of us having one ADA each. Again, if we exchange one ADA each, we will all be left with one ADA each at the end of the day. So cryptocurrencies are directly interchangeable and they represent the same store of value. However, when it comes to NFTs, because each one of them is unique, and because, the next point we also talk about supply. Generally, NFTs have a limited supply. So because each of the NFTs are unique, let's just again go back to Pokemon trading cards, one of its kind, the only trading pack in the world, and each one of them is a unique Pokemon card. If we were to change cards, at the end of the day, the value of each of that card may or may not be the same in the eyes of the collector. So some collectors might say, oh, Charizard is a rare card. Charizard should get the most value, versus some others might say that, hey, I don't even mind paying a hefty sum for a Pokemon like Pikachu, because Pikachu is the star of the show, right? So the interchangeable aspect of it, right? When we exchange NFTs, we are not left with the same NFTs. I mean, yes, they are all Pokemon cards, but they have different stores of value. And finally, supply. So NFTs typically have a much smaller supply. There was a time when NFTs would come in, there would be like, a project that sold 10,000 NFTs at a time. But now with the market shifting, you're seeing more and more collections that are lesser. So you have collections of just 500 NFTs, 1,000 NFTs. And you also have a lot of one-of-one artists where they are only creating that one NFT. So all of these things make NFTs even more rare. And finally, let's look at how they are structured on the blockchain. Most of the times when you look at cryptocurrencies, a lot of the cryptocurrencies are the token that is mined by a certain blockchain or DLT, right? Cryptocurrencies are either a layer one token itself, the actual governance token, the actual token, rewards token for those supporting that blockchain, that DLT. Or they could also be tokens that are launched on top of DLT. So, when we think about ERC20 tokens, for example, right? So if you know about USDC, then USDC is a token built on top of Ethereum. So essentially, cryptocurrencies are tokens like that. On the other hand, NFTs. NFTs are always, they are never like, a native digital token of a layer, right? So if people are mining something, at least so far, there isn't a blockchain or a DLT where if you are helping support that decentralized infrastructure, you are able to mine NFTs. We don't have anything like that at the moment. So generally, NFTs are launched as tokens on top of a blockchain or a DLT. And the most important thing is that NFTs store some digital record, a unique digital record, and also proof of ownership associated with that NFTs. All right. So we'll go on for a couple of more slides, and then I will quickly stop and ask if people have any questions, okay? So we'll just look at the basics before we move into more details of NFTs. Well, let's just talk about blockchain, right? I know we had another session on blockchain. We had some amazing speakers already talking to this. So I'm not going to dive deep into it. However, we need to understand what the blockchain technology is, right? So we know that the blockchain technology is a public distributed ledger system, right? And what is the work of a ledger in general in real world? It is a system of record, right? An accounting proof. a transactional statement. So that is what a ledger is. Blockchain uses cryptography to secure data, and also that ensures the integrity of transactions. So these transactions, once they're logged onto the blockchain, they are immutable. Now, finally, smart contracts, these add a layer of trustless contract execution to blockchain. And we will dive a little more into smart contracts in the next slides. But essentially, smart contracts allow us to bring in governance beyond just exchanging tokens and recording them. It allows us to use the blockchain use DLT as a way to execute contracts and transactions without having any intermediaries in between who could change the outcome of them. So if that's being managed by a smart contract, we know what to expect when a certain set of parameters are given to that smart contract. And then finally, blockchain technology, as we know, is decentralized, right? And decentralized means there is no single central owner. It is distributed. And you also do not know which node in this decentralized distributed infrastructure is the one who's going to help you process your transaction on the blockchain. So it ensures a fair transaction processing. All right. So with that, let's just get into the next thing, which is smart contracts. So what are smart contracts and how are they important to NFTs? So the first thing that we need to understand here is smart contracts leverage the public, decentralized, immutable blockchain stack, right? So you can think of smart contracts as self-executing contracts where the terms of the agreement are written into the lines of code. So a simple agreement in real life, you could just think of it as, let's say, a vending machine, right? An automated vending machine. And that vending machine is very transparent. Let's say, the vending machine is a Coke vending machine. You can see whether there is Coke in there. And if you can see the Coke, and if you put $1, let's say the vending machine gives you a Coke every time you put $1, right? So as long as it has that supply of Coke, if you put $1, it will dispense a Coke to you, right? There is no one in between who will take that dollar from you and run away. So trust is an important aspect when it comes to transactions, right? And we know that we have had people who unfortunately lead to a breach in trust. On the other hand, smart contracts, first of all, no one can suddenly go and just change the code of the vending machine and say that, hey, instead of dispensing $1, you just collect $1 and then go and say, display an error message to the user, right? So essentially, we are just trying to cash grab the $1. So that can actually be done to a vending machine, right? You can go and change the code to do that. However, once you deploy something on chain, right, normally those smart contracts are immutable, so you cannot change. There is also the concept of upgradable smart contracts where changes can be made. But it's a very different methodology. I mean, it's not the same as thinking that you can go and change all the code, but you do have changes that could be introduced by way of upgradable smart contracts. But more importantly, what happens is you are able to create a smart contract, right? Where there is no third-party intermediary required to broker your transaction, or no intermediary required for you to give money to someone so you can collect something from someone. The smart contract is self-sufficient and it takes care of everything. So you can look at a smart contract and say, this is exactly what the smart contract is doing. So if I give this smart contract $10, I will get an NFT from it, right? So obviously, with smart contracts that are self-executing contracts that are fully contained, with that, what happens? We obviously are bringing in automation to our transactions. And more importantly, we are removing any middleman. So smart contracts allow us to use the transparency of blockchain of DLTs to add this layer of self-executing automation on a decentralized infrastructure that can be trusted by us. I mean, even though we call it a trustless transaction because you don't have to trust anyone, but because it is immutable and you can see it, as long as you know how to look at a smart contract and you understand that, you could use that, you could trust that to perform in a certain function, provided you give it a certain set of inputs. Okay. Now, finally, NFTs are deployed as smart contracts, which means that it's this self-executing machines that are on any blockchain, like even Bitcoin or Ethereum or Cardano, right? These machines, these self-smart contracts, first of all, they manage the entire life cycle of an NFT, right? And the life cycle of an NFT includes the creation of the NFT, any exchange of NFT, and also NFTs can be burned, right? Which means NFTs are essentially being destroyed or taken out of circulation. So when you take it out of circulation, that NFT can no longer exchange hands. Okay, so that is known as NFT burn. So you have smart contracts that can take care of all of that. And also, smart contracts by nature, what also happens is they'll provide that digital provenance for NFTs, right? What does that mean? It allows you to prove that this NFT is owned by a certain person, an ownership proof, right? The concept of digital ownership and scarcity, right? Here's the thing. We spoke about the Pokemon cards. So let's say you have the Pokemon cards. There's only one Pokemon card ever printed. Generally, what happens is when you have something in real life that's been printed on a piece of paper, it is hard to duplicate it, right? Obviously, we know there are people, like even with paintings, right? The most famous painters in the world, their paintings have been mimicked and duplicated so often in order to try and cheat people, right? But it is a hard process. However, as you know, if you have a digital picture of someone, you can easily make 1,000 copies of it. And all of those 1,000 copies will be exactly the same. Now, if you were trying to make a copy of the Mona Lisa, there is a very high chance that you will have experts who will be able to easily tell you that this is not the same Mona Lisa. In fact, if Leonardo da Vinci tried to create the Mona Lisa all over again, naturally an artist, right, they're never able to replicate their work, especially when it's in paint, the exact same way. There would be some difference in the brushstroke here and there, and it wouldn't be an exact copy, an exact replica of the Mona Lisa, even if Da Vinci was alive and painting the Mona Lisa all over again. However, once something is digital, you can easily make 1,000, million, 1 billion copies of it, and each of the copy would be exactly the same. So in this case, how do digital artists, or how can you prove authenticity and ownership of a digital asset if anyone can just copy it and duplicate it, right? That is where blockchain comes in to the rescue. Blockchains and DLTs. DLTs stand for distributed ledger technology, okay? So blockchain is a DLT basically. So that is how blockchains help us out here. What can you do with blockchain? With blockchain, you can add a verifiable ownership to an object. So what does that mean? It means like, an NFT, let's say I am some famous artist. I am not, I wish I was, but let's say I am some famous digital artist. I work and I create a one-of-one piece, which is very beautiful. Now, if I were to just go and publish it to my website, people can download it, make so many copies. And I mean, I may or may not have any control. I'll have to track down each person, sue them for copyright. And for most artists, that's not going to be economical. However, people can do that. But let's say, I created that artwork. I minted it as an NFT. And there is a collector who is interested in collecting it, right? Now, what happens is others can still go and create digital copies. However, first of all, if the collector is collecting from me, right, where I am the owner of the smart contract where this NFT can be minted, the owner knows that this is coming from that authentic source, right, which is me as an artist. If the collector is collecting from me directly. Secondly, when the collector collects it, they become the authorized, the authenticated owner of that piece of art. Now, people can go and download it and create 1,000 copies, but it wouldn't matter. Why? Because those 1,000 copies are exactly that. They are copies. Versus this collector has collected the original from me. So that automatically provides authenticity, right? And more importantly, because this copy that the collector has is the original copy, it also automatically captures value that way because there is just one copy and that copy is owned by this person and we can see that on blockchain and everything else is a fake. So that is what happens, right? That is how blockchain provides verifiable ownership and it automatically makes things scarce because I could say that, hey, this one of one painting, this is the only one. So everything else is a copy. So when people look at it, the way they are going to look at it is, if we want to own this painting in the right way, then there is just one copy that we can own, right? And that one copy, the true copy, is the one that a collector has collected. So if somebody else wants it, they can collect it from the collector, right? So that is how blockchain adds those records for verifiable ownership and scarcity to the NFTs. Now, let's talk about the birth of NFTs, right? How did NFTs actually start? A little known fact is something about colored coins. The colored coins started in 2012, 2013 on Bitcoin, right? Then when we think about NFTs, we automatically think about Ethereum because the ERC 721 protocol and ERC 1155, it started on ETH. But technically, even before Ethereum was launched, because Ethereum was launched in 2015, on Bitcoin, people tried to use Bitcoin to store more information than just capturing a store of value, right? That experiment was known as the colored coin. And what essentially happened was there was a Bitcoin function that could be used to capture very minimal data, metadata. So a group of people, and there was a protocol that was created that could be used to capture the metadata. So the color would represent what kind of transaction it is representing, like real estate, etc. However, that experiment was not very successful because of the limitations of the Bitcoin network. And ultimately, colored coins fizzled out, died away. And that's the reason why we don't know about colored coins anymore, right? But that was like the first experiment in trying to create something of an NFT. Like, this is a precursor to NFTs. So then finally, on Ethereum, we had projects like Cryptopunks and Cryptokitties being launched, right? We will talk about the NFT protocols also. But Cryptopunks was like the first digitally generated project on Ethereum, right? The first 10K collection. And most importantly, they were generators. So they started an era of generative art. They were not necessarily using the transformers from Gen AI that we know today, but the idea was that they used computers, right? They used an algorithm programming to create 10,000 pieces of unique digital artwork, right? They fed it certain layers. There were thousands of permutations and combinations, unique combinations of those layers that could be created. And Larva Labs was the team that did that. So Cryptopunks was that original 10K NFT on Ethereum. And as we know today, Cryptopunks, because of that historic moment, they command a high price. More importantly, there are only 10,000 Cryptopunks. There are 8 billion people in the world, right? So there are only 10,000 Cryptopunks and there would never be another Cryptopunk. Why? Because these Cryptopunks are the original. So by doing that, automatically scarcity is also introduced. Because at any point, in the world, there are only 10,000 Cryptopunks. So Cryptopunks started as that first NFT collection, and then we had a wave of Cryptokitties. So Cryptokitties was launched by Dapper Labs, right? And Cryptokitties introduced gamification to NFTs. So the way Cryptokitties worked was you could go and mint your CryptoKitty, but if you had more than one CryptoKitties, you could actually breed the CryptoKitties to create your own new unique kitten. So by introducing these new kittens, this new breeding workflow, CryptoKitties actually added a layer of dynamism and gamification. And at one point, people loved it so much. It was so popular. CryptoKitties was so popular that because of people, trying to breed their kittens and whatnot, it led to the Ethereum network being congested because of the popularity of CryptoKitties. Unfortunately, what also happened was, like right now, if you go to buy a CryptoKitty, it is not, you can get it very cheap. And that is because this whole idea of new kittens being added to the collection by way of breeding, and there was no limit on how many new kittens can be added, it actually took away the scarcity factor from CryptoKitties. So because of that, NFTs generally, when you look at the value, scarcity is an important thing. But because CryptoKitties technically is an unlimited collection, you can keep on breeding, keep on getting new kittens. Because of that, CryptoKitties has lost its value, especially because it lost its scarcity, right? All right, okay. So then, moving on. After these two, again, guys, use the chat if you want to ask a question, okay? I am going to look at the chat. I will not stop to ask you if you have any questions, but put it in the chat and then I'll address them, okay? All right, so then, what introduced NFTs to the world? The ERC 721 Ethereum Improvement Protocol, right? So the ERC 721, that's the standard that introduced non-fungible tokens to the world, right? There were a few people who authored this paper. They introduced the standard. That standard was adopted by the Ethereum community. And essentially, this is a standard that proposes how Ethereum can be used to create unique digital assets. And there are some new functions that are added, etc., in order to create non-fungible tokens. Now, remember how we said non-fungible tokens are almost always unique, right? There's just one of one. So when gaming companies, etc., started leveraging it, what they realized was, a non-fungible token is cool, but sometimes you want to create something like, let's say, in a game, you have, let's say, an armor, right? But you just want 5,000 pieces of that armor. And all 5,000 pieces will look the same, but there will only ever be 5,000 pieces of that armor. So if you get that armor, let's say, in a combat game, it gives you some special extra protection. However, instead of having just one armor, you want to still have a limited edition. So you just have 5,000 of those armors, but all 5,000 of those pieces are the same. So that is what the ERC 1155 transaction allows you to do. It actually allows you to create semi-fungible tokens, right? The reason why we call it semi-fungible is because they are not exactly one of ones, but at the same time, they are still limited, right? So there are just going to be like 5,000 copies, for example, right? So ERC 1155 brought in the semi-fungible tokens, and it was mostly made popular by gaming companies trying to use NFTs and creating limited edition gaming collectibles. Finally, through these two transactions, we have been able to provide a secure, reliable, efficient way to create, manage digital goods, digital assets on Ethereum blockchain. Now, these same standards were also adopted by other chains that are EVM or EVM compatible. And then there are some other chains which aren't EVM, but they also looked at these standards to figure out how an equivalent token system could be built, or token standards could be built on those particular chains. Like, Cardano isn't an EVM, Cardano has its own implementation of NFTs, but all the developers, they looked at ERC 721 to make sure that, the basic principles of what NFTs are were captured across different DLTs and blockchains. Okay. All right. So there's a chat question here. Is the same standard used across all the blockchains? So like I just mentioned, right, it may not be the same standard. Mostly on EVMs, it's ERC 721 and ERC 1155. But for the sake of interoperability, so for example, on Hedera, it's called HDS, and just like Cardano on Hedera also, NFTs are actually sort of native to the chain. And that allows you to bring in some additional features like enforcing royalties. Okay, we haven't even touched upon royalties. We'll talk about that, not in this session, some other session. But yes, it's not necessarily the same token standard that's used across. However, most of the developers looked at ERC 721 to make sure that in principle, the NFTs that were also being created on other chain, they sort of adhered to the principles of the ERC 721 channel or standard, if not exactly adopting ERC 721. Okay. So different chains could actually have different standards, but at the end of the day, the main thing is that NFTs, the essence of NFTs is captured. So then the timeline of NFTs, right? Now, what happened was because of the smart contracts being used to launch NFTs, Ethereum is where NFTs were being built out, right? So 2015 was when Ethereum was launched. 2017 was when we had Cryptokitties becoming popular. Then in 2018, big companies like NBA, right? They launched NBA Top Shot, which was essentially, again, like if there are any sports fan in the house, sports collectibles, right? Like the trading card, the sports collectible industry is a big industry. And what the NBA did was they launched collectible cards of these famous sporting moments in history. And they launched the NBA Top Shot, and it automatically, it immediately jumped to gaining a lot of traction from fans across the globe. In 2020, Beeple, a one-of-one artist, actually sold his painting for a whopping $69 million in 2020. And then in 2021, NFTs really became a mainstream phenomenon where everybody was talking about it, right? So now let's look at what are the different ways in which NFTs are being leveraged today, right? So we spoke about gaming. In gaming, NFTs can be used to represent digital avatars, any collectibles in game, skins, any collectible items. Oops, sorry, go back here. Right? So any digital asset in the game that can be actually minted and collected as an NFT. Then collectibles themselves, right? So as we spoke about NBA Top Shot, similarly, artists can use it to share their own digital artwork. And many a times, if you have something physical, you could actually use an NFT to share that digital proof of authenticity and ownership record with the owner that the collectible is being sold. So it allows you to represent digital collectibles. And it's not just digital art, but also music, any memorabilia, as well as even digital proof of records. Like in the Santa Clara County, right, which is in the Bay Area here, the Santa Clara County, the DMV, has actually signed a contract with Tezos, and they are going to use NFTs, Tezos NFT implementation, to actually capture car registration titles. So if you think about it, any car registration is generally unique, and they are going to leverage blockchain to easily leverage that infrastructure, first of all, right, to capture the registrations. And then more importantly, to also capture the history of it on chain. So yes, so they have a wide range of applications from gaming to real estate. So we spoke about gaming collectibles and NFTs, as I mentioned, with car registration. Even in real estate, people are looking at using NFTs to not just fractionalize real estate and own a piece of real estate, or even put real deeds of real places on as NFTs right on the blockchain. But also you have virtual real estate, and the deeds to that virtual real estate, like decentralized sandbox, anything in the metaverse, those deeds are also NFTs. Okay, so these are some of the various domains in which NFTs are being used. Then I just spoke about this. Beeple, like NFTs provided a new channel for artists to connect with their fans and distribute their artwork to their fans without having any middleman in between, right? So Beeple, who is a digital artist, made a record when in 2020, Beeple sold Beeple's first 5,000 days. That was the name of the artwork that was sold for $69 million, right? This was in 2020. So now what's happening with NFTs? 2021, as we know, NFTs rose to fame. However, at the moment, the NFT market is actually fairly down. So in 2021, in Q4 of 2021, the total trading volume for NFTs was 17.6 billion. In Q1 of 2022, that went down to 12.6 billion. So it's kind of down. And also the average price was 3,400 in Q4 2021. In Q1 2022, that average price is 2,200. And if you look at March 2022, so despite the overall market trending downwards, you still have significant traction with NFTs being sold, right? Like in March 2022, there was a Cryptopunk that sold for almost 92 million. In April 2022, a Bored Ape Yacht Club sold for 118 million, right? These are big sales. But right now in 2023, the NFT market is down. However, people are still leveraging NFTs. Like the enterprises are leveraging NFTs to still capture a few different things. Like, enterprises like Starbucks are leveraging NFTs to reward their members and further strengthen their membership communities, right? Then you have enterprises using NFTs, like Avery Dennison uses NFTs to actually capture the carbon footprint of the labels that are manufactured. And so NFTs as a technology, NFTs are not going anywhere. However, at one point, NFTs were being sold for crazy prices, and that has definitely gone down. So, right now it is going through a slowdown. However, the technology itself is not gone anywhere, and it still provides a very nice avenue for digital artists. So we are now seeing the rise of a lot of musicians, for example, on sound.xyz, right? And these musicians are able to sell their NFTs and collect money from their fans directly and actually make more money than they would have made with a traditional record company, where generally a traditional record company, when they sign a deal with a musician, they keep 85% of the profits, right? So what are the challenges for NFTs that we are looking at? There are environmental concerns with blockchain itself. So Ethereum, as we know, went from proof of work to proof of stake. I'm not going to cover that right now, but essentially, in order to keep running these decentralized infrastructure, there is a lot of carbon emissions that happen. So people are concerned about that, right? Like, hey, if you have a lot of NFTs exchange in hand, you need a lot of machines to keep it running. But now with proof of stake and some other different consensus mechanisms, we are looking at more greener chains, so we don't use electricity and leave a larger carbon emission footprint, right? Then we have had issues of plagiarism and intellectual property infringement. So for example, unfortunately, there have been people who have just blatantly copied artwork from Deviant Art, for example, right? And published it as their own NFT. So today we do not have those right checks and balances and measures in place to prove that if someone is minting an NFT, they are the ones who also created it, right? You kind of have this trust-based system where, if they are minting it, they are the ones who have created it. There are some people who moonboards and stuff where NFTs are created cryptographically. So you can see that, okay, this was created using the transaction hash. So there's only one of one. But unfortunately, we still have this issue where people are copying artwork and trying to post it as their own. And then finally, because NFTs, it's just like that Pokemon trading card game, right? The value of an NFT is speculative and the market is highly volatile. So for artists or anyone else coming in trying to use NFTs to build a business upon, this may or may not become their full-time job, right? Because there is a lot of volatility involved. These are some of the challenges with NFTs. So what are some of the future prospects for NFTs then? Okay, I don't have the bullet points, but for NFTs in near future, as I said, first of all, we are seeing a huge adoption of NFTs with enterprises to reward their membership communities. Also, NFTs still provide a great avenue for artists, especially one-of-one artists, to connect directly with their fans. So through platforms like Sound.xyz, or artists can also go and launch their own collection. Right now, you have a trend of smaller NFT collections doing better than larger 10K collections, but you still have a market. People are still buying, right? And NFTs for creators, NFTs for enterprise use cases, that's where NFTs are being used. And even to record any digital ownership proofs, right? So like I mentioned, recording car registration title ownership, recording your property deeds, NFTs are being used for those use cases as well. So as John Smith famously said, NFTs are revolutionizing the way we think about digital ownership and digital scarcity, right? All right. And with that, we conclude this session of NFTs. We obviously have a lot of NFTs, a lot of opportunities with NFTs in the future. And we are going to explore how to create NFTs as artists, right? To publish your own artwork to the blockchain and connect with the community and how to distribute those NFTs. These are some of the topics that we will be covering in our future sessions. And now we are a little bit over time because we started late. But with this, I'd love to wrap up this session